makes me feel like a man.
You want every team to lose any other game?
Sorry. Bailey Zappi just do another time.
You know what? Wait. Time out.
Are you kidding?
That's what I'm
I'm gonna try to drop a mic.
Welcome back to the Warner Brothas Podcast. This is part 2 of our first episode, which we were breaking down the NBA Finals, talking a little WNBA, talking a little UFC. Part 2, though, we're doing the top 10 most exciting NBA players that we've seen with our own eyes. Look, sports fandom's it's different. People have different levels of sports fandom or how often they watch. I was watching sports just as much as cartoons as a little kid, as like a 5, 6, 7-year-old. I don't know how common that is. I don't know how uncommon that is. I know there's other people who grew up like that. Keenan had no choice but to grow up like that. So I think his younger years were much like mine as far as watching sports.
Absolutely.
I know a lot of the guys we grew up with, shouts to Nate, shouts to Aaron, shouts to Andrew, they very much watch sports at a young age like us.
Yeah.
So I'll say this. Mine spans some years, but there might be some players that you think would be on mine that are not on mine. And I'm very interested to hear your list, Keenan. I think we're going to have some overlap.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're going to, I'm assuming anyway, that we attack this list differently. Mine is very, I'm not going to give away too many
I have
details.
one
Actually,
player that I have one player that's not a superstar that I am confident on your list. Just one player. And if he's not, I'm going to be shocked, but you'll know when I know, or I'll know when you know, and everyone knows, but one player specifically.
Okay. Yeah. How do you want to start that? I almost wish we had more people. I mean, we have one cooked up already that's going to be bounced off this with Brandon and Duke that I'm very excited for, which maybe we'll hold that for after the finals. Maybe we'll hold that for
we have some stuff. The summer, summer's coming along. The NFL is not going to be fully in swing. WNBA is only going to have so much going on. The Olympics will be here, but there's a few months in between where we can dive more into some music stuff. We can dive more into some more fun, not just everyday kind of topics where we can kind of push the little creative agenda out there. But do you want to go back and forth?
That's what I was wondering. How do you want to do it? You want to go back and forth?
Let's go back and forth. Let's go back and forth just so we don't give a full 9. But let's go back and forth and go from there.
Keenan, I will say mine are not in any particular order.
No. I don't really have an order to mine. I kind of just listed a bunch of people. I don't really have an order to mine either.
Well, I got my 10. Would you like to go first? Would you like me to go first? How do you want to do this?
I'll go first.
Okay, all right.
I'll go first. And the first one that I'm going to mention, a guy who's still in the league today, very good player, peaked at close to a superstar, roughly around that superstar, is Paul George. I've always been a fan of watching Paul George, young Paul George, the great athlete. Then obviously he had the devastating leg injury. When he came back from that, he said, I was listening to him talk on this podcast, and he said that leg injury really helped him kind of slow the game down for him because he was able to sit out for a year and watch and kind of be like, oh, I would pick my spot there. I'd pick my spot there. And then he became a more controlled player, even though he was still very good early on. And so Paul George is one of my favorites. He can fill it up. One of the smoothest games you'll ever see. Everything about him is just smooth. So Paul George is on my list. He's one of my guys.
It's funny he developed into such a smooth player.
Yeah.
Because he was so raw when he came in. And even in that famous conference finals matchup where they ended up against the Heat, I think in 2013, that was his real emergence. He didn't really have a smooth game yet. He was still getting to the rim. He was still a good shooter. He had the 3-point shot. He's had that since he got into the league, but he was more a 3-and-D guy who was thrust into the number one ball handler role because Danny Granger got injured. He just kind of took it and ran with it.
Yes.
I never would have guessed he would have had this much nuance to his game. Like you said, he's extremely smooth. His handle is like, it's up there with a point guard, you know? I actually remember Keenan, someone we just talked about in the last podcast, obviously, Jason Tatum. I remember like when he was coming out, when he was at Duke, you're like, oh, he reminds me a lot of Paul George.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that was a common comparison at the time, but the way Tatum's grown, obviously him and Paul George have different games, but very similar as far as what they can do with their handle at like between 6'8" and 6'10", depending on who you ask. They're somewhere in between there, but their handles are like as good as any guard. They each got a good layup package. Let me just keep it to Paul George here. He ended up getting a really nice, smooth layup package. He's got a little euro to his game. He can still punch it on you.
Yep.
Like you said, young to prime Paul George, who could really just get up and, he's got his bunnies. He could punch it on your head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he was exciting to watch. He's got a little T-Mac to his game, too. I'd throw that in there.
Yes.
So, yeah, he's got some Jason Tatum. He's got some T-Mac. But
I agree with that.
Overall, like you said, it's Paul George. That's his own game. So, yeah, shouts to Paul George. Shouts to PG-13. Let me ask you this. Do you like 24 Paul George better or 13 Paul George?
I'm always a fan of the younger player. Like I like 8 Kobe more. Like I love first Cavs LeBron. I love pre 2009 Wade. Like I don't know why I've always been a fan of like the younger
2009 Wade is specific.
Yeah, it was weird. I know, but just kind of weird because like at that point, the 2009 was where he still had a bunch of athleticism, but he really became such a complete, like he slowed his game down a little bit more. When we were talking about Wade just on the last one, he was so he was like recklessly good. Like it wasn't even like Russell Westbrook reckless. He just didn't care about his body. Like he just did what, like he would go to the paint. It was, I don't care what kind of people are there. I'll go amongst the trees and I'm going to throw up a layup from some random angle. But go on.
Let me stop you right there. I was going to read these in order, but that seems like a perfect segue because Dwyane Wade is on my list.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about, I just asked you 24 or 13 Paul George. And I kind of laughed when you said pre-2009 Dwyane Wade because I got peak Dwyane Wade. I got anywhere from 2006 probably to the end of the 2011 season. Probably the finals was the last time we saw peak Wade. So 06 through that 2009 season. Man, we actually, like you said, we talked to Dwyane Wade on this last episode, and I kind of gave my description away a little bit. That version of Dwyane Wade, when he was at his peak, when he was at his best, he could go toe-to-toe with Kobe, go toe-to-toe with LeBron, go toe-to-toe with whoever the top players were in the league, Kevin Durant, Dwight Howard, any of them, Tim Duncan, Dirk, all them guys. Dwyane was as good as them.
He compares to Kobe more than people. I mean, that was one of our first podcasts we ever talked about was Dwyane Wade. Is peak Wade and peak Kobe are right neck and neck.
For sure. And what I loved about Dwyane Wade's game, and I mentioned this on part 1, but his relentlessness. That's what I'll always remember the most about that version of Dwyane Wade. It just seemed like he lived at the rim.
Yep.
And if you threw a counter at him, or his counter would be just that step back, that pull back, reverse between the legs to a mid-range jump shot. Like he was extremely good at just that.
Where he put the ball over the guy, like over the defender. That was like his go-to.
He had all the tricks, and again at his peak and early on, just all the explosiveness to where he could just jump over you, dunk over you, just go through you, finishing with contact, finishing acrobatically like a Kyrie or like a Michael Jordan. He was extremely fun to watch. Fun to watch, and it seems like there aren't enough highlights that are consistently going around of him because his highlight package or highlight reel is as good as anybody's. And, especially, like I said, from his rookie season on, in this case, just peak, which I would say was 06 to 11. It's hard to beat watching a player as exciting as Dwyane Wade. It's hard to beat someone who was that competitive, that creative. That 09 season in particular, Keenan, he had a string of buzzer beaters, famously with that steal against the Bulls with a pull-up, like floating three.
Yep.
That Dwyane Wade, Keenan, you could make a clear argument that he was as good as either Kobe or LeBron. They were 1, 2, 3 that season without a doubt, and you'd give the edge to LeBron and Kobe because Kobe got the ring and LeBron got the MVP. But Wade was just as good as him that year. You're right. I mean, and you would not be wrong for saying that. So, shouts to Dwyane Wade.
30
He's
points,
in my top 10.
5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, a steal and a half, and a block, shooting 49% from the floor, with like Michael Beasley being your second best player. And they went 43 and 39 that year. If they went 47 and 35 the next year, if he has that 47 and 35 record and they are like the 3 seed like they were that next year, I think he wins MVP that year. But statistically, LeBron was real close to him. The advanced numbers favored LeBron, and then obviously the Cavs are just a 60-win team, so it was hard not to. And plus, LeBron didn't win it the year before, where he very much could have, because Kobe needed one. So, like, Kobe deserved it too, but Kobe got his one, and then it was like, okay, it's LeBron's time. LeBron got his one, but still a little salty Wade didn't get that MVP. Dwyane Wade is also on my list. Dwyane Wade, for people who don't know, is my favorite player of all time. He's been love myself some Dwyane Wade, everything about him. He's the reason why I'm a Heat fan now. I used to be a Shaq guy, the big guy who was dominant. I'm a 5-year-old kid. I was like, man, he's fun. And then he goes to the Heat, so I go from being a Lakers fan to a Heat fan. And the first, I watched basketball. I watched a lot of ESPN highlights, but the first time I really sat down and watched games were that finals run. And then obviously Wade averages 39 points over the last 4 games, down 0-2 when the format was 2-3-2, which definitely benefited them having 3 straight home games. But obviously, I'll talk about Wade at a different time to go deeper into like those kind of things with Wade. But absolutely, he's on my list. But my next one that I'm gonna go into.
Wait.
So sorry. Do you want me to go more with Wade or?
Sure, yeah. Since I went with him, makes sense. That way, we're not overlapping too much.
Okay. Oh no, I was gonna say.
That's all you had to say.
No, I was gonna say the really more that I had to say about Wade. I mean, you kind of touched upon everything.
I see what you're doing. So you going like snake order then? You're gonna go Wade and someone else?
Yeah, I was gonna go Wade and then someone else
All
was
right.
what I was gonna
All
do
right.
because of the fact that you already got Wade. So Wade was mine, and then now I'm gonna go with my next guy because really you touched upon everything with Wade and clutch. There's nothing there was no shot he was scared of. I mean, in his first postseason, he was making big buckets down the stretch. I think he had that game winner against the Hornets in his first ever postseason. So, never afraid of any moment, big games, big shots. You even saw it in 2011. He really was. I mean, he was mostly the closer for the Heat in most of those until LeBron really got to that point, took that over. But my next guy, he played in a different country at one point, still in the NBA.
Yeah,
No, he played in a different country technically because he was in Canada. It's half man, half amazing. Air Canada, whatever you want to call him. Vince Carter is on my list. Best dunker of all time. Don't care what anyone says about anybody. He's the best dunker of all time. Has the best dunk of all time in game, jumping over somebody 7 foot in an Olympic game. Obviously, best solo performance in a dunk contest when you think of iconic. Obviously, you could talk about Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon. Those ones are best battles ever, maybe, or Neek and Jordan back in '88. But Vince Carter, he wasn't just that, though. He could go get you 40. He would make big shots. He could go get you 50 in a playoff game, absolutely. Like, this guy, he had everything. We're talking about Wade being as good as Kobe and LeBron at that time. Vince Carter on a given night could be as good as any single person in the league. He could compete with your best player. With him, you wish he had a little bit more of that Kobe determination in him because he had everything Kobe had talent-wise. He had. Kobe just had the work ethic and then got the footwork. Kobe just had such a relentless determination to be great. And you felt, from what I know early on, you wish you had a little bit more of that from Vince Carter. You can speak on that a little bit more than me. But Vince Carter, one of my favorite players of all time, absolutely. Vince Carter on my list.
Shockingly, Keenan, Vince Carter was not on my list.
Ooh, that is shocking.
You will see on my list that there is some 2000s players, but those players mostly bridged into the 2010s.
Yep.
and weirdly, he wasn't in consideration. Like I got my list to 10, but this was one of the easier lists I've ever made. I think I got to 12, and the other two, I was like, it was easy for me to narrow down.
Yep.
And it's kind of fucked up that Vince Carter is not on my list. He should be on my list because he's without a doubt one of the most exciting players of my lifetime. The most exciting player of my childhood. And let me say this about Vince Carter. In a league where we had Kobe, Shaq, Allen Iverson, T-Mac, KG, right? Those are 5 very exciting players, right? And at one time, T-Mac and Vince on the same team, by the way. So imagine that.
Yeah.
Vince Carter was by far the most exciting. And Kobe, like, if Vince Carter isn't in the league, Kobe is by far the most exciting player in the league at that time. So it's no knock to Kobe or T-Mac, because then T-Mac was doing Vince Carter and Kobe type of shit once he got to the Magic.
Yep.
But for Vince Carter to be by far the most exciting player in a league that, again, had, let me just single out these 3, Iverson, Kobe, and T-Mac, all with their own teams at one point. Again, Vince and T-Mac played together, but post-2000, they got their own teams. They're just putting together fucking highlights after highlight, those 3. And Vince was still the most exciting. Like, you had to be there. You had to be there. And Keenan, I'm going to transition to someone who really took the torch for me, for Vince Carter, to being like must-see TV, regardless of who he's playing, regardless of who else is playing. You just got to throw this game on. And you're going to see this with my list, Keenan. There's a lot of specific era players, right? You're not going to have many whole career players as my most exciting. It's going to be specific to a team, specific to a period of time. With this, it's going to be Clippers, Blake Griffin. I really think he took the torch from Vince Carter as must-see highlights. I'll throw LeBron in there too, obviously early LeBron. But, man, when Blake came into the league as a rookie and really up until he got traded to Detroit, and that's really when the injuries hit. I mean, he had injuries before that too, don't get me wrong. He missed his first season because of injury. But when he finally made his debut, you could not miss it. There's obviously that famous highlight of him dunking on Timothy Mozgov. Keenan, I can remember from that night, like catching the SportsCenter highlights. Mm-hmm. He had and you can probably look this up on YouTube, like the original highlight package of it. He had 6 other dunks in that game.
I think his legendary dunk over Mozgov wasn't better than his other dunk over Mozgov. I believe it was in that game. I think that one I like more.
I think the other one you're thinking of, he did a spin move dunk on Gallinari.
Oh, so it was Gallinari. Yes. Oh my god. Oh,
and then I don't remember the other dunks, but I remember there was a couple lobs. Like he had 4 other highlight dunks in that game. Not to that level of the Gallinari and the Mozgov dunk, and it was like that. Just imagine that every night with Blake Griffin. Like you're either getting a tip slam dunk, him just putting someone in a fucking body bag, right? Whether it's Mozgov, whether it's Perk, whether it's Pau Gasol twice in one game. Oh that he bodied Pau Gasol, which you know what he had that tip slam, which you could argue was an offensive foul, but thankfully they didn't. But the next one he had in the second half when he put the forearm on Pau Gasol, that was probably an offensive foul, but he fucking bodied Pau Gasol. Absolutely bodied him.
He shut down KP's Twitter.
Yeah, he did. He did shut down Kendrick Perkins' Twitter. He's got a couple punches on Ibaka if you want to watch it. I mean, I'm just rambling off here, highlights off the top of my head, but we're just talking game. He had a little bit of handle. He could pass better than anyone probably remembers.
He was a better player than people will probably remember. He had a legitimate game where he was that playoff run. We talked about it a few podcasts ago where he was starting to almost border top 8-ish, top 5-ish player when he was 24 and 12, could pass, that was when he was developing his jump shot. He ended up developing a 3-point shot with Detroit. He's not on my list, but he was in my thoughts because of how good and how fun of a player he was, but he's not on my list, but
he was named nicknamed must-see BG for a reason. Yes. He had a great dunk contest performance as well. Just overall, like I said, must-see TV. Another game I'll throw out there that just had multiple highlights was in their first round series against the Spurs, where he got Aaron Baines twice in the same quarter.
Yes.
Yeah, he was must-see TV. Between him, Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan, Jamal Crawford, and just all the other notable players they had on their team. Like they ended up being one of the more hated teams of that era. But
LaMelo would have
they
fit
were
that
must-see
team
TV.
so well. I'm just thinking
What's
of
up?
today's play. LaMelo would have fit that team so well. He would have just thrown
Kinda, yeah,
so
he
many
would.
crazy lobs and
LaMelo
down court
would've.
passes. He actually would have been super fun on that roster. Randomly.
Last thing I'll throw out with that connection of Chris Paul being on there in Lob City, we also got DeAndre Jordan over Brandon Knight because of that. So imagine
what a
that.
monster jam by DeAndre Jordan.
It was it was literally Nerf hoop with DeAndre and Blake Griffin and Chris Paul on a nightly basis. So memories of that
the only
team,
sad
fond
thing
memories of
they
Blake Griffin.
the only sad thing they didn't do was a double alley-oop.
They somehow did not do a double alley.
I don't understand how it wasn't a Jamal Crawford off the glass to a Blake Griffin throw up to DeAndre for a dunk. Like I feel like that would have. I feel like that's the
Jamal
one
Crawford through the legs alley oop
thing to a
Blake
windmill.
Griffin to a windmill. We got a lot. There's a lot of highlights. in
Oh,
there.
absolutely. I'm not like it's not like we're lacking on highlights whatsoever. But I'm just sad that we didn't get that.
Should I go? Snake?
You
here
should
too?
go
I?
again because I've got 3. Since my 3 right now are Paul George, Wade, and Vince, and you just have Wade and Blake. So you go again, even though you're back to, and then I'll go.
All right, I'll keep it with the same theme. I'm gonna shift to a different era. We're gonna shift to the current era, and this is someone I think took the mantle from Blake Griffin as someone that you gotta watch their games. You gotta see the highlights. They got a game on that night. You've got to go to Twitter and see if there's any highlights. Maybe go to Instagram, check House of Highlights and see what's going on here. Just said highlights like 5 times in 6 seconds. But he is, and let me say this before I name this player. I took some personal disrespect after the Anthony Edwards dunk of the year, which don't get me wrong. That might be dunk of the decade. We might be able to wrap it up. But I heard a lot of people say, oh, Ant's the best dunker in the league. Meanwhile, this guy's on the sideline. I know he's had his issues. I'm talking about John Morant. John Morant, to me, is the best dunker in the league. John Morant, when healthy, is the most exciting player in the league to me. Man, people are talking about Ant with early Jordan, and I get it. They walk alike. They got that same swagger, but when you're talking about early Jordan, like all I can think about is like the hang time, the ridiculous layups, the ridiculous just hang time dunks. John Morant's right there. John Morant has some of the most
early
ridiculous.
Mike and an early Kobe the way, because the one thing that you and I say always is that Mike went for it, but Kobe went for it always.
Yeah, Kobe wanted to end your life.
Mike was like, I'm going to score, and if I need to go over you, if I need to disrespect you, if I need to do whatever it needs to do to put the ball in the basket, I'm going to. Kobe was, you're in my way. I actually want to, I hope you're not in the league after this because you're embarrassed. That was Kobe, and John Morant has that mentality. Go on talking about Ja.
Yeah, Ja's just 6'1". He's the most exciting player in the league to me. He is unguardable in the open court. Someone who's the same size as Derrick Rose, but will dunk over your 7-foot center. I'm not saying Derrick Rose can't do that. It just seems like Morant's hops are on another level. So again, because
he's
of
a
his
mix
hang
of
time,
Rose and Westbrook with hops.
Pretty much.
Westbrook has that explosive 2-foot instant pogo, and Rose had the hang, and Morant has the instant pogo plus the hang. So it's he's insane.
Again, that's why Morant reminds me more of young Jordan than anybody with his hang time. His handle's nice. He is creative. We talk about Dwyane Wade splitting the pick and roll. Morant is one of the more creative players I've seen splitting the pick and roll or coming downhill off a screen. He's got I want to say sneaky handle, but he's got better handle than he's credited for.
Yep.
He's even got a nice array of a layup package. He'll do a 360 layup on you. He's got a nice Euro in between.
He even has
game.
a layup package below the rim.
Exactly.
He actually has a legitimate below the rim package.
He had that one play, I think, where he did the behind the back, brought it back to the same hand and threw a lob up to somebody. He's just doing ill shit all the time. He's got that block against the Lakers where he smacked his head against the backboard. I get it. Ant is great. I love Ant just as much as the next person, but let's hold off on he's the best dunker in the league. He might be the best dunker in traffic, but Ja Morant is the best dunker since Blake Griffin to me. So shouts to Ja Morant. He's on my list of all time, and he was there probably after his rookie year. He's that exciting. So moving on to you, though.
The same way you're surprised that you didn't have Vince Carter, I actually don't have John Morant on mine. He was literally in the final ones. The guy who I'm going to mention next, though, I just talked about, name is Derrick Rose. My God, we're talking the fun point guard who could hang with anybody prior. Derrick Rose was that guy before his injury. And I mean, a touch after, but really before the injury, MVP Rose. There was time, every time he went up for a layup, I remember one specifically, him and KG jumped up at the same time. KG was on his way down. This is like late time KG, but KG's on his way down. Rose still's just like in the same spot. And I'm like, how do you defend? Like, he's in the air. It feels like he's in the air for 6 seconds. Like, he obviously it's like around like a second and whatnot, but like at his peak. But it's like he's around it's crazy. Derrick Rose, the dunk that I still don't understand to this day, Goran Dragic, why did you jump? There was no chance of you getting that ball. I'm glad you did because you created a highlight for me, so thank you. But like, there was no way you were doing anything with that. He has a spin move, 2-hand punch, and it's like, that's amazing. His layups are more impressive to me than his dunks, and his dunks are massively impressive. So, and then he has some passes where it was like the double clutch passes that he has because he has such hang time. Everything about Derrick Rose was fun. Mixture of the hang time with Mike, the flash kind of quick moves that reminds you a little bit of Wade, the finishing at the basket. There was nothing Rose couldn't do. Started to develop that mid-range jump shot in the 3. He had some big shots throughout his career. Obviously, the big one he had against the Cavs is his post ACL. He had one against the Bucks, a big step back. But Derrick Rose, fun guy. Loved watching him play. Sad that his career got derailed by injuries, but he still made something of himself as a role player for sure. He had that 50-point game a few years back. But shout out to Derrick Rose.
I'm going to add to that because I had Derrick Rose as well. Obviously, rookie year to MVP era, pre-ACL, Derrick Rose.
I think 30 in his first playoff game ever.
Yeah,
Boston.
He got the record. It might have even been more than 30. But I echo everything you said. He is such a unique player. I've come across Derrick Rose highlights from time to time on Instagram, and I'm just always like, man, what could have been? He reminds me, you mentioned his layup package, Keenan. He was very much like Kyrie. Kyrie's more creative, but he was very much Kyrie, where you're like, how the fuck did he finish that? And I think he was a lot like Iverson, where he would find angles that you didn't know were there, or he would fit into angles that you didn't know were there. Incredible. You have to like just go watch his actual game highlights, like game by game. Those like 8-minute cuts of his highlights, because it really gives the nuance to his game, because he was explosive. He was, I think, the fastest with the ball I've ever seen. Westbrook would obviously be up there too. And Westbrook, how explosive he is, like all of Westbrook's like highlights could just say like fuck you in the background, because that's just like his whole game. Like Westbrook's game is like one big fuck you. Like he plays like a power forward. Yeah. And Derrick Rose is similar. Like anytime he was attacking the rim, whether it was a layup or a dunk, it was so disrespectful. But the difference between him and Westbrook was, Derrick Rose is oftentimes coming off an ankle breaking crossover. Westbrook's handle wasn't as tight as Derrick Rose. So Derrick Rose, to me, what sticks out again is just not only the angles he would find in the air or in traffic, but even like just handling the ball at the top of the key. And when he went to break down someone, he would get to a spot like that you could tell, like only he could see. Like he was so fast, he would get to certain spots that you just wouldn't believe were there. Very unique player. And honestly, Keenan, I don't know I've never seen anybody move like Derrick Rose. There are some times when he's in the open court, and honestly, I don't want to sound crazy when I say this. There's times where he's going so downhill, it honestly looked like the court's like tilting a different direction because I've never seen someone actually look like they're running downhill with the ball. Like he literally just looks like a halfback. It's crazy.
Yes.
So yeah, shouts to Derrick Rose. He's on my list too. There was nothing like it. You had to be there. He was everything we're saying. He was as advertised. Shouts to Derrick Rose.
So we each have four right now. We each have four. Yours is Blake Griffin, Dwyane Wade, John Morant, and Derrick Rose. Mine's Paul George, Dwyane Wade, Vince Carter, Derrick Rose. My fifth player, I'm actually curious to see if you have him. You were talking eras. This is an era. This is an era. I'm blending in a little bit of college into the NBA, but the NBA is obviously the focal point of it for sure. Cardiac Kemba Walker is on my list. I used to, me and Joe, because of Kemba's step back against Pitt, and then obviously of his tournament run, we used to be stupid. Joe Gagner, shout out to Joe Gagner, by the way. We used to just be dumb and step back before we did anything. So, like, I would step back before I'd open a door. So I'd step back away from the door, then open the door, or step back randomly just to do something stupid, specifically because of Kemba and how athletic and, like, how quick and shifty he was. So random. But
isn't that I think that's a prerequisite if you've ever played, like, any sort of basketball, right? It seems like you'll step back the garbage can, like you said, or whatever, or like something's in the way, you Euro step it.
So I Euro step I Euro stepped an old lady the other day in Walmart because she almost ran into me. But that's a natural thing. But like I meant like before doing like random things because of Kemba. Like, why am I stepping back to open a door that's in front of me? Don't know. But it's because of Kemba Walker. It's just random things. Kemba was
a nasty step back.
He was such a fun player to watch. Athletic, quick, had a jumper on him. Obviously had the great tournament run. Kemba Walker is on my list for most exciting players that I've seen.
So you just gave a random one, a player who's not going to make the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to clear out. Yeah, it's time. And this is probably the player you thought I was going to bring up. It's Nuggets J.R. Smith. And maybe I'll throw on Knicks J.R. Smith. But
I would have bet the house. That you were putting J.R. Smith on your list.
Nuggets J.R. Smith holds a near and dear place in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
He plays
next to Steve Novak.
Yeah, he played NBA basketball like I play, just pick up basketball, like just jack up threes. Actually, no, J.R. Smith plays pretty much like only J.R. Smith, like just a complete gunner. He only went for threes and highlights. He tried to break your ankles. You just never knew what you were gonna get with J.R. Smith.
We just saw a man fly.
He even like those Nuggets playoff runs, he legendarily had like terrible shooting performances. Like made Karl Anthony Towns look like he had bad games. Like I'm talking like
he'd go
21% from three type shooting.
He would go like 0 of 9 in a game, and then the next game be like 7 of 10, and you're like, wait, what?
You never knew what you were getting with JR. He was more consistent in the playoffs with the Knicks and Cavs, though. But
absolutely,
he even said, like in an interview one time, he said he likes taking contested threes more than open threes. He didn't even need to say that because we saw it on tape. We saw it every game. Like I think he holds the records for most. He might hold the record for most threes attempted in a game. I could be wrong about that, but I think there was a game. Versus Miami where every single one of his shot attempts were threes. Like he didn't even attempt a single field goal inside the paint. So between J.R. Smith's just
it's
wanting
up
the jacket,
there. It was before we became into the 3-point era. It was 22.
Yes.
It was 22, and then Harden's put up 22, Steph's put up 22, but in all of these games, it's like these guys are making at least 10 threes. Like Steph did it when he scored, he had 10 threes, Lillard had 13 threes, Clay had 14. So it's been, the only one that was really bad was James Harden had a 7 for 23 game. But other than that, like,
that's still not bad to give it 7.
It's not even terrible. It's just around like 30, like it's a little under 30% 30%. I guess around 30%.
But between J.R. Smith's constant need to shoot threes, bomb threes, whether they're deep, whether they're contested, whatever, and oftentimes just having a heater, having a game where he just takes over. And that's with Melo being the best player on the team. Some nights you would just have these games where JR is the best player on the floor, where he's got a 360 layup, or maybe he's got an ankle breaker into a three, or, you know, it wasn't Tony Parker, but it was against the Spurs. He had that two-handed dunk. So, like, you just never knew what you were getting with JR. You might get the worst shooting night of anybody's career when you watch, or you might get a 40-point A3 night, again, with some highlights mixed in between. So the J.R. Smith experience was a fun one. He was great on the Knicks. He was more subdued on the Cavs, but guess what? Suited his game perfectly because all he had to do was spot up and hit threes. Yep. And even then, he had some great highlights, dunks, step backs, or otherwise with the Cavs. Shouts to J.R. Smith. Shouts to Earl Smith III. But yeah, definitely in my top 10. Interested to hear who you have next.
We each have 5. I'm going to go...
Are we going to go snake here? Am I going to go back to back, or how are we going to do this?
We've been kind of going back and forth, and then when you mention a player that I have, we've been going snake. So
go ahead. All right, I'll let you go.
So I'll go, and then we'll see if we have the same guy, then you can go again. But superstar, Hall of Famer, top 20 player of all time, an MVP, a 2-time Finals MVP, a scoring champion, one of the best scorers we have ever seen. His name is Kevin Durant. He is on my list. Watching Kevin Durant play in the effortlessness that he plays with, one of the most complete, if not you could argue the most complete scorer we've ever had, because there's not a spot on the floor he can't shoot from and can't score from at ease. Pull up from 35, can get to the basket. The mid-range is unmatched. One of my favorite games of his is his 54 in his MVP season against the Warriors. Steph had 37 in that game, but he had 3 straight threes from the same exact spot on the floor in like 4 possessions. And it was like, okay, what are we doing here? Like, we can't guard this guy. I love that we got to see him in like finals runs and actually in the finals of the Warriors, other than the fact that obviously those teams were loaded. We got to see him in the finals, see how he played in the biggest moments. And I mean, he did exactly what we expected a player of Kevin Durant's stature to do, and it's ball out. So Kevin Durant is on my list. Arguably the most complete scorer of all time, one of the best scorers we've ever seen. I love his game, Kevin Durant.
Durant is not on my list, actually, despite him being probably my top 10 favorite players of all time, or somewhere in that range.
It's different. Durant, it's weird how favorite and exciting are 2 separate lists.
Yeah, and he was definitely a bubble guy. But since you mentioned an all-time great, allow me to introduce another all-time great. Some might have him as the greatest of all time. I'm talking about a specific era of LeBron James. Rookie season all the way to his last season with the first Cavs stint. Nothing like it. Every single night, much like Blake Griffin, what I said, like, you might just miss the greatest highlight of all time if you didn't watch the game or if you didn't check in on the highlights. Obviously, it was a different time in the mid-2000s. Like, legitimately, the best highlight in NBA history was in play with LeBron James.
Yes.
Every night. And he was playing at 1,000,000 miles per hour. He was chased down blocks. He was punching on everybody. Open court dunks were always sick. You know, he still does the same shit. He still does that one-footed windmill. He still does that rock the baby type reverse off 1 foot. Like, everything he's still doing now, which is crazy to say 20 plus years later, but at a much more explosive level. I mean,
he just jumped 5 inches higher and just did it quicker.
Early LeBron literally looked like he was just playing a different sport from everybody. Like, he, again, offense and defense just flying around. That's the only way I could describe it. Like, just in constant, complete
defensively a free safety, offensively just he had like the breakneck of Zion in high school, but smoother. And so it's just like everything about LeBron. I'll let you talk about him more because he's on my list before you talk. Let him talk about more before I get into it.
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, he got those 2 MVPs, and he was like not nearly the talent he became or the complete player he became. Like he would have these nights where his jumper was just falling like a Kobe or like a Mike. Like he could just go for 40 or 50 off jump shots. And it would come and go. That's the weirdest part. Like there would be some nights where he wasn't confident in his jump shot. And, you know, you might catch him having a terrible shooting night. Other nights, again, he would look like Kobe or Mike. He would just be in such a zone. It really seemed at that time like his potential was endless. And it truly was. Like you just never knew what version we eventually would get, you know, in Miami and in Cleveland. Like it could have went any other way. And no matter what, it would have been an all-time elite player. I mean, he already was at that time. But, man, if you would have said he was going to be like what Luka's doing right now in a spread offense and maybe relying on his jump shot a little more, or maybe if he was in the post a little more, we would have believed that. I mean, really, we kind of got all these versions of LeBron anyway, especially in, you know, certain playoff series. But that early version of LeBron, much like a lot of what we said about Blake Griffin and Vince Carter, is very true. You just could not miss his games. Truly. And he was like completely beloved. I know now it's like, it's polarizing to be a LeBron fan, or if you're not with LeBron, you're against him. There was still some of that, obviously, because it's, you know, like we're seeing with Caitlin Clark, there's just haters in the WNBA now for or against her that just were not there before. That was definitely the case with LeBron early, but he was definitely much more beloved in those first 6 or 7 seasons. So, yeah. Early Cavs LeBron.
Yeah, so LeBron is on my list as well. I love that early LeBron. The thing with LeBron that I love the most is like there's so many different stints of his career that you can love. Like early LeBron when he was flying, as we were talking about, chase down blocks, punches on, doesn't matter if it's Tim Duncan, doesn't matter who's in the way, if it's just tomahawks with his head skying at the rim. And then you go from that, then you go into the Heat LeBron where it was, I'm going to put on weight, I'm going to be a big, plus I'm also still going to have that 40-inch vert, where you could argue he was almost at his peak. And then you get into Cavs LeBron where he's just such a mature player, still has that athleticism, but he could control an entire game at whatever pace he wanted to. And then now you see Lakers LeBron obviously doesn't have that same kind of athleticism, can't have the same kind of control over games, but still can control a game. He can give you 40 still. He can get you 15 plus assists. One of the best passers we've ever seen. One of the best defenders we've ever seen, really. Obviously, he might not be on the Mike and Pippen level, but he is as versatile as any defender that's ever been in the game. We saw him, okay, I'll take Derrick Rose. I'll take MVP Rose, and I'll go try to lock him up. Okay, I'll take Paul George. And then in the same playoffs, okay, I'll take Roy Hibbert. I'll block Timothy Mozgov at the basket. Like whatever it is, like he was doing that because he's just such a great player. So LeBron James is on my list 100%. But
let me add to that.
Go on.
One thing I left out, I didn't even mention his passing, which is crazy. So you can add that to early LeBron too.
Yeah.
But what happened during this run of 2004 to 2010 early Cavs LeBron? Excuse me, is Redeem Team LeBron.
That might be my favorite era. Like that might be my favorite time of watching basketball. Kobe, Wade, and LeBron together defensively was some of the greatest basketball I've ever seen.
Well, so let me add to that. So you just mentioned Kobe and Wade. So they got the ball a lot, right? Mm-hmm. They got the ball. You got Melo to feed. Melo turns into a spot up shooter.
Yep.
But you also got Jason Kidd and Chris Paul, and I think Deron Williams on that team as well.
Yep.
So you got the ball out of LeBron's hands, right? So a lot of times he's just roaming on offense. So he's a lob threat. Maybe he's a cutter. It just freed up his game a lot more than what we were used to seeing in the NBA. And then defense, like you're using LeBron almost like this, I don't know, like this tool almost. Like you could put him on the best ball handler on the other side. You could put him on their big, like you said, his defensive versatility. But you put him on a team like that's like literally a dream team, no pun intended, redeem team in that case. You could literally just throw him anywhere and just use him however you wanted to use him, whether as a power forward, small forward, point guard.
He could play center on some of those lineups if he needed to with the
exactly. So, just him in that role, almost being used how an Andre Iguodala would be used, but you're using LeBron James in that form and letting maybe Kobe and Wade take over the offensive reins a little more, and Jason Kidd.
Wade defensively was scary, and like he averaged so
Yes.
many steals a game.
And
Like
and Wade, and I left that out. Let me touch on Wade. Wade was insane during that Redeem Team run. He was actually probably the more exciting player during the
you
Redeem
could argue
Team
he
run,
was the
which is
best
crazy.
player on that. Like it's like one night you'd be like, okay, Kobe's definitely the best player in the league, and then one day you're like, okay, LeBron might be the best player, and then like you're like, oh no, Wade, he's doing this. It's crazy.
And if you want to throw it back to the FIBA, like the World Championships in 05, I think, when that team really first started to debut, or probably 05 and 06, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Wade and LeBron, and of course Kobe, but especially Wade and LeBron, they got some serious highlights in those two, and Tyson Chandler and Dwight. So yeah, they it was just highlights all around between Kobe, LeBron, Wade, and all of them. So yeah, LeBron James.
Yeah.
Early LeBron.
And okay, so LeBron's on my list too, so I'll segue into my next player. This one I know you knew I was going to be on the list. I'm excited to see LeBron play with this player for the first time in organized competitive basketball, and that's Steph Curry. Obviously, one of the best ball handlers we've ever seen, the greatest shooter we've ever seen, must-see TV. He's still up there for me as one of the most exciting players to watch in the league because he's poised to go on a 20-point bonanza in 5 minutes. Most 20-point quarters, bonanza, most 20-point quarters of all time. And it's because, obviously, the three-point shot, he's going to pull from 35, he's going to pull from 40. As he's matured, the layup package has got even better than before. It wasn't just floaters over JaVale McGee. He splashed onto the scene, of course, he had the 54 in New York, which really put the world on notice. And then the playoff run where they got to the second round, splashed onto the scene with that 22-point third quarter in the first round against the Nuggets, puts up 44 in an overtime loss against the Spurs, and people are like, okay, this guy is going to be one of the next true stars in the league. No one at that point thought he was going to be a top 10 player-ish of all time, close to that. But Steph, just there's so much about him. Obviously, there's so many 50-point games that he's had, and the explosion in which he scores might be one of the most explosive scorers we've ever seen. He could argue he's almost the most explosive when it comes to just small dose of time, putting up points. Obviously, with the three ball, he can do it better than just about anybody. So Steph's on my list, of course, but that probably wasn't a shock to literally any single person who has watched the podcast.
Steph is on my list as well. Actually, Keenan, he's the very first on my list. So I don't actually remember how I stumbled upon this idea or if I was watching highlights and that's what brought it up, but he was the very first name I put down. Specifically, I put 2013 through 16, Steph Curry. I felt
16 season is unlike any season I've seen from any singular player in any sport ever. He was it legitimately was just, it was a different time to watch basketball in that 16 regular season.
It was. And, to throw it back to Curry in college at Davidson, like he just looked like a junior high school kid giving everybody buckets, and it seemed unreal, which made him a polarizing prospect. Yep. He obviously went 7 to the Warriors, 7 or 9, whatever he went. Yeah, because
the Timberwolves had 2 point guards and they passed on him with Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn. And then he was 1 pick before the Knicks, who were looking at taking him, which obviously I'm glad he's in Golden State because how they play worked out, but him in Madison Square Nightly would have been insane.
Well, we got him in Oracle, which is the number one rival to MSG if you're talking about all-time great crowds. Yeah. And really that's why that specific era, 13 to 16. But again, just to bridge it from college, he was excited. Like it was nothing like him. Again, like a kid looks like a junior high schooler, giving all these guys who just look older and bigger than him buckets, like insane amount of buckets. And you wonder, can it translate? And like you said, I think you said he became second in Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
So we saw glimpses of it early. I don't think most people could have envisioned this becoming, a top 15 type of player all time, a multiple time MVP. I don't think a lot of people saw this coming. And, when it did explode onto the scene, like you said, that 54 point Knicks game or versus the Knicks at MSG. That was really his like huge coming out party.
Yeah.
He was obviously already a big name, but that's one where everyone's like, oh shit. Like I think I remember even the next day people were already asking like, is he the best shooter of all time? Because that was such an explosive performance.
And then he was an all-star snub that season, which that was really brought up after that, because like he was snubbed from the All-Star game, and then obviously he has the playoff run, and then it's like, okay.
But that playoff run that you're talking about where he went through the Nuggets and then they gave the Spurs problems, and combine that with like being the first important moment for the Warriors since the We Believe team. Oracle is a fucking party every night. And then, you get to them being contender status after a couple of years. And before that, in that 13 and 14 season, they got a rivalry developing with the Clippers. And like I said, Blake's probably the most exciting player in the league at that time. So, I mean, it was really a perfect storm of things.
Same draft class too, which is cool.
Same draft class. And then when you get to that 16 season and Curry's just doing the most ridiculous shit ever. I remember...
You had to watch every night. Like you knew something was going to happen every single night. You had to watch every night. Something was happening.
I remember, this is my favorite way to describe Curry, and I can't remember if it was like a former athlete who said this or if it was genuinely just some random person commenting online, but it fits. I remember, I think the Warriors were playing the Nuggets in the preseason or some shit like that, and Curry shot a three in the corner, turned, dapped Iguodala up before the shot went in, and then ran down the court. And I remember someone commented, I don't know if this is Twitter or Instagram, whatever, but someone was like, Steph Curry plays with the most confidence in the league. And that sounds like such a simple statement. You think about it and you're like, all right, but so doesn't LeBron or so doesn't Kobe. But then you think about it, Curry would just do wild shit on the court. Like
the Clippers play. He dribbled.
I was going to say that Clippers highlight when he's between 3 or 4 people and jacked it up. Like that's what Curry looked like all the time. Like he would literally look like how you would play
this to this to this
laughing. Yeah, like I think Curry would be like if we could all just go out in the court and do that, like we would all love to play like that. If we could all just handle and jack up threes and just have every bit of confidence that no matter how we put it up, it's going in. That's how Curry was playing at that time. Like it was reckless. The same way Westbrook's reckless when he plays, but it's all athleticism and it's all dunks and it's all like these crazy blocks and shit. That's Curry with the three in the handle. Like he would just, there'd be no rhyme or reason to it. You'd be in the middle of the flow of the game and Curry's pulling up from 45 or Curry's
and that wasn't,
fucking...
And like today it's normal for people to pull up from deep. It wasn't normal for 18 seconds left on the shot clock for some random guy to just pull up from 36 and hit it. And then, or like shoot a 28-footer and turn around and not watch the ball go in. Like, and it's going in.
And it's still the Davidson effect. He still doesn't look like he belongs. You know what I mean? He still looks like he
has a beard finally now, but like then it was just a goatee. He's put on weight, of course, like 15-ish pounds. He was slight then, so now it was like, what is he doing? And then to top it all off with the shooting and the handle. Crazy finishes around the basket, like the floaters where he's throwing it up 13 feet in the air over a 7-footer, or like just he finishes so well around the basket, plus the threes, plus the handle, which is why then you talk about some of the most skilled offensive players we've ever seen. He's got to obviously be in that conversation. And then the no-look pass, he could pass better than give credit for too. Like he actually can pass, but again, they took him out of that true point guard role to put him in a role better suited for his shooting and for his offensive game. And obviously it took off, but thank Draymond for that, because you can't do that if you don't have a Draymond Green at a 4.
Absolutely. Who you got next?
I'll go next. Oh, we have LeBron. We got those. So we got 2 left. I'm going to go with a random one.
I've got 3 left.
You got 3? Okay, so then you go, because I've got...
I shall go. All right.
Yes, because I have 2 left, because it's Paul George, Wade, Vince, Derrick Rose, Kemba, KD, Steph, LeBron. Yeah, that's 8 for me.
All right. We will keep it with all-time greats then. As you've heard me break down with a lot of these players, they're all era-specific. This player is not era-specific. I saw him pretty much much like Tom Brady, from my childhood up through my 20s. May he rest in peace, Kobe Bean Bryant.
It's on my list too.
What an incredible player to watch. And again, it says something that he's one of the only players that I don't have a specific era attached to him. Like even in my notes, like it just says Kobe because it's a fact. Like I saw early Kobe. This makes it even more damning, honestly, that Vince Carter did not make this list again because he would have fit this criteria too. But when I'm young, really starting to watch the NBA, I'm watching Kobe and Shaq, and Kobe's dunking on people. Kobe's still going for 40 on a whim. And obviously, it's even more impressive because, like Anthony Edwards, he's in his early 20s. And he's got all the athleticism, all the flash. Cool. Then Shaq, as I mentioned, I think on the last episode, I forget what it was, honestly, but, Shaq starts to enter this different point in his career, and Kobe becomes the number one option in the regular season. And this is really the case from this point all the way on the rest of his career up until the Achilles injury. You just never knew what you were going to see with Kobe. Yeah, you could get a cool 30-point night, but it wouldn't be crazy to see a 50-point night for a 2-week stretch of Kobe averaging 45 points or something ridiculous like that. I think there was a couple months in his career, probably in that 06 season, probably in 03, 04, like all these, like there's certain months where he would average something like 39 points a game. And, we talk about how you couldn't miss watching Steph, how you couldn't miss watching LeBron, how you couldn't miss watching, Vince Carter or Blake Griffin on a given night. It was the same thing with Kobe, but you never knew when it could become like a 81-point game. Keenan, I think I've told you this, just like generally talking. I remember seeing on that Sunday that Kobe dropped 81, and I should have been like, oh shit, but I really was not surprised at all. I was not surprised at all. I'm like, yeah, that fits. Like, I think that was the same season he dropped 62 3/4, which is famous. He had that, one of my favorite Kobe highlights, aside from all the dunks, aside from his ankle breakers, because he's got those too, which is underrated. People don't even talk about Kobe's handle like that. Aside from his footwork and his post package and all this, like all the creativity Kobe had, one of my favorite highlights is his fucking shot clock's winding down. He's in front of the Mavs bench and puts up a left-handed three, and not even like guide hand or anything, just push left-handed three. Yeah, Kobe was insane. And even in his late career, when he switched to 24 and he lost his athleticism a little bit,
the Matt Barnes throw the ball, the fake throw the ball at the face. And he doesn't even.
That's an all-time highlight. Doesn't flinch.
Because it wasn't even like he was. Because you naturally are going to be like one of these, just like a little quick one. He's just standing there like, try it, like please, dude. You're not doing anything. And this Kobe is Matt Barnes. This is a guy who was like about it at that. Like so, jeez.
Kobe was such a badass. I didn't really love him as a player up until really like 2008, 2007. I enjoyed his highlights. Peyton Manning
are in the same category for me, where I didn't appreciate them until late in their career.
I enjoyed his highlights, and Kobe's career and popularity, I should say. He was always popular, but he was polarizing too, much like LeBron.
Yep.
But he became unanimously beloved, and his stock really took off after that 08 Redeem team as well. We mentioned
Lil Wayne has a song.
Lil Wayne has a song about Kobe. We mentioned how important the Olympics were and how fun that team was with LeBron, Kobe, and Wade, and how Wade and LeBron, especially like athletically, were insane to watch. Kobe was too. Kobe still had all the athleticism too, and he was fun. He was locking people up. But what I remember most from that, you got to remember, LeBron gets his MVP in 09. Like you said, he could have got it in 2008, probably could have got it in 2007 or 6 too. Like his stats were there. Mm-hmm. But you could make an argument that he was better than Kobe. You could make an argument he was better than Wade, and Wade's got the championship at the time. At this time, you got to remember Kobe hasn't won a ring without Shaq yet. And he's had some unsuccessful seasons. So there was really like, who is it? Is it Kobe? Is it Wade? Is it LeBron? They're like, is it Tim Duncan still? Is it Dirk? Like, who is it? And Kobe in that Olympics, in that Spain game, and the gold medal game, he took control. Like all the players deferred to him, and it became clear who was the alpha. It became clear who was the best player in the league. This really doesn't add to his excitement, but it's important to note that when you fit it into the Kobe, I want to say narrative, but the story, because that's true. Like it was really up in the air. And I think the Kobe we all hear about and talk about now really starts with that 08 Olympics, because that's really when he truly became beloved and like as popular as LeBron and Mike was in his prime. That's when Kobe became that type of popular. I don't think he reached the level that Mike did. No one No one got that popular, but that version of Kobe is right there with LeBron, I would say, which is, they're neck and neck right there. So, and look at Kobe's shoe sales. That's when really Kobe, the brand, really took off, was post '08 Olympics. So, but just the game itself, you never knew when you were going to see a disrespectful dunk, ankle breaker, or again, an 80-point game from Kobe Bryant. So, rest in peace to Kobe. So he's on my list.
I'm gonna echo everything you just said about him. My favorite highlight of him is when the full court pass to him and he goes around the back and then like the reverse dunk. That's my favorite dunk of one of my favorite dunks of all time.
We should have been doing best highlights for these guys. That's what we should have been doing for each one of these.
Yeah, it was a miss. I mean, I could go through and do.
We could go back and do it, but. I did say the left-handed shot for Kobe would be up there for me, so I'll keep that for him. But that's one of my favorite dunks, too.
I was just saying I can easily give you my favorite highlight of all of these guys, but going through like those highlights from Kobe as a dunker, I think one of the top probably 4 in-game dunkers we've ever seen. Better than Mike. I know people probably don't think that in head, but better than Mike for sure to me, just because he went for it more, as we were talking about when we were talking about John Morant and even Dwyane Wade a little bit, how Kobe just went for it. But Kyle was talking about 40-point months. He was suspended for 2 games at the start January in that 06 season when he averaged 35. He averaged 43 points a game in that month. I'm going to just read down the totals real quick, and we can then just move on to the last player for me. So those totals: 48, 50, 45, 41, the bad 27 points, 38, 37, 51, 37, 81, 30, 39, and 40. He had more 50-point games than he had sub 30 games in a month. That's insane. In a month. So that is insane. So when we're talking greatest scorers of all time, it's Mike 1 if you want to try to put like Kareem up there, obviously because of total points, LeBron total points, but when you're talking just like games, Mike has to be 1, and when you're going through 40-point, 50-point, 60-point, 80-point games, Kobe's got to be up there at number 2 for me when I was going through. We went through it a little bit when LeBron broke the record for 40,000, or eclipsed 40,000, which was obviously one of the greatest moments of my lifetime for an individual feat. But Kobe Bryant, absolutely on the list. I know friends of mine, especially like shout out Daniel Reed or whatnot, thinks I might be a little bit of a Kobe hater just because I think the totality of his career can be mentioned with other guys a little better. And when people say he's top 3 all time, I think they need to very much slow their roll. But Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, absolutely. You as a player, amazing. And I really, really wish you could have been here right now with women's basketball taking off, because oh my God, would you have been even... Oh, that's an hour conversation itself. He would have been so perfect for this right now. But anyways, my 10th player, not one of the greatest players of all time, a champion, a 4-time champion. Actually, a 4-time champion. I'm writing that. Tony Parker. I love Tony Parker's game. Below the basket, the float game, one of my favorite highlights from him, since we're now starting to talk highlights, 2013 finals, game 6, right before the LeBron 3 and then right before the Ray Allen 3, back-to-back possessions, LeBron's on him. He says, I don't care. 2 straight buckets on LeBron.
Hit him with a step back, I think.
He hit him with a step back from like 20 out. That's one of my favorite. I think that's probably my favorite highlight. I know it's not the best. I know he's had plenty of highlights, but man.
He also had the game winner in that game 1 too.
Yep. Absolutely. Tony, big time player. The later he got on into his Spurs tenure up until that 2013, the better he was getting. Obviously, early on, it was obviously Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan was still great towards the end there. And then you had Manu Ginobili off the bench doing what he does. hitting bats out of the air, crazy passing. But Tony Parker, the way that he was able to get to the basket, the array of finishes he had around the basket, the shooting that he had mid-range, I just love watching him play. He was such a unique player because obviously he wasn't going to jump out of the gym. He didn't have all the range in the world like Steph to where you had to kind of play him a certain way. He was just, how smart can I be to get by you? How crafty can I be to get in the lane, to get to my spots and finish? Tony Parker, one of the most exciting players of my lifetime. There are people that I have left off of this list, but that I love here that could be in another top 10, honestly, for me. Tony Parker.
Let me hear some of your bubble guys.
Let me hear your 10 first, because I don't want to ruin your 10, and then I'll give you some of my bubble guys.
Got you. Well, I'll actually give you some of my bubble guys first. You said Tony Parker. Manu would actually be like one who's like, he's probably my favorite.
He wasn't your 10?
He was not in my 10.
Oh, wow. I'm shocked. I'm actually surprised. I have no idea then who's actually I have one idea, but
Manu would have been on there. I mentioned Durant. So Manu, Durant, Vince Carter, and then the other player who was on this list, or is considered for this list, would have been Chris Paul. He was Hornets and Clippers. Chris Paul was one of my favorite players, and then, kind of waned after that because, I don't know, he's always been a dirty player, but it seemed like he became especially a chippy, dirty player after that. And he was on the Rockets.
There's not one of two players for me that you could have. I don't know.
And one other player, actually two other players. I'm going to throw two other point guards at you that could have made this list that did not. And that's Steve Nash and Jason Kidd. And
can I guess your 10th after you're done?
You can guess right now. Go ahead, guess. I have two more. I have 9 and 10. This is 9 and 10.
Oh, okay. Oh, I forgot you had two more. Okay, so I'm going to guess both of them, and I'll see if I'm right.
Let's not. Let me actually reveal them. Let me reveal them, and if you think you got them right, you can tell me. Because I'm going to segue from Jason Kidd, because this player, in a small way, reminds me of Jason Kidd. That's Rajon Rondo.
That was one of them. Absolutely was one of them.
For sure. Yeah, no, Rondo, I've mentioned this on the show before. It's literally a you had to be there for this player type of moment, because Rondo really only had 4 or 5 peak seasons.
44 in game 5 against Miami.
He only had 4 or 5 peak seasons, but you could debate again, like before Steph Curry took off, it was, I don't want to say common knowledge, or it was pretty unanimous that Chris Paul was the best point guard in the league. And people would debate that maybe Deron Williams could overtake that. Like, that was the big debate at the time. And then Rondo, who is 6'1", with an insane wingspan, and is on that team of Hall of Famers with KG, Paul, and Ray Allen. Excuse me. Why do I always get the hiccups like towards the end of these episodes? I don't understand it. Rajon Rondo emerges in 2009 when KG injures his knee and he never comes back. And then Rondo just kind of takes off from there. But what made him so exciting was he could control a game without scoring. Again, he's 6'1", and was, for whatever reason, an elite rebounder. Could have
6'9"
an 18
wingspan.
Could have an 18 rebound game. Could affect the game defensively. Incredible passer. One of the smartest players I've ever seen. Much like Jason Kidd. Incredible in the open court. Incredible in the half court. Did not have much of a jump shot, and then some random games he could just turn it on and just have a jump shot all of a sudden. I've never seen anyone like him. I've never seen anybody be able to just possess that much talent and just turn it on and off when they want. And again, to be able to control a game without scoring, not many players can do that.
No.
And that's where I'll throw Jason Kidd, because Jason Kidd could do that. And Jason Kidd, I mean, we talk about Vince Carter. We had Jason Kidd and Vince Carter on the same team at one point. Just, that's the original Lob City. And yeah.
And they had RJ on that team with Kenya Martin, I believe.
What's that?
I said, didn't they have RJ on that team with Kenya Martin?
RJ was on that team, and I think Kmart was gone by the time.
You think? I couldn't remember Kmart, but I believe RJ was there too, because RJ was a high flyer too.
All three of those players with Jason Kidd were must-see TV, though. But, just to keep it with Rondo, a true one of one. If we're going to talk favorite highlights, that Jason Williams, where he tracks down the loose ball, picks himself up on the ball, like does a push-up on the ball, so he doesn't get called for a travel, and then makes a move to the rim and scores. That was great. His fake behind the back to Tony Allen, where he got LeBron. LeBron was chasing him down, or it wasn't a fake behind the back. It was a leave off behind the back pass, fake the layup. That's a famous Rondo highlight. That's up there. Then of course, I said fake behind the back. That's because that was his signature move. Fake full behind the back extension to a scoop. Rondo was just super creative. I'm sure there's more highlights I could think of, but those are the first ones that jump off to me. Then my last player, Keenan, this is going to be no surprise. I left him last because we're going to be talking a lot about him. We have talked a lot about him. And he just might be number one on this list, period, for me, and that's Kyrie. I put specifically his rookie season till his last season with the Celtics because we honestly didn't see him in Brooklyn that much. He has amazing highlights on Brooklyn as well, but what he played 3 seasons there, 4 seasons there. 2 of those seasons were either marred by injury or the whole COVID situation. He just did not play a lot for Brooklyn. He was very exciting, and he's still very exciting with Dallas, but there's still a difference. He still does not finish as much as before.
He
still finishes a lot.
89% of the time now. It used to be like 99%.
100.
Like
it was like you could put Kyrie anywhere on the court, and if it ended with him being at the rim, I don't care who was around him, the ball was going in. And Kyrie is easily the most creative player I've ever seen. And a lot of the players on this list, on mine and Keenan's list put together, are extremely creative and extremely innovative and, are off the cuff as all artists are. All these players we mentioned are artists in their own right. Like,
yes.
That's why I love them. That's why they're the most exciting players, because they're not just playing the game, they're playing and entertaining. And it's art at the end of the day. And, Curry's right there too, especially that 2016. But man, Kyrie, his highlight package, his highlight reel is up there with anybody's. Between his layups, between his handle, between everything. And let me just give you some highlights since, we're going to include this now. There actually is one Keenan. Funny enough, because I said, Cavs era through the Celtics era. But one of my favorite highlights is when he's on the Nets. It might have been his last season. I don't know. But they're playing against the Rockets, and he's coming off a screen, and he throws the ball out in front of him as he does. He'll throw it out and then decide what he's going to do. And he did, I believe, that Dwyane Wade carryover type of Euro that you mentioned earlier. He held the ball out, and I think it was Sengun was caught on the down screen. So Sengun's approaching him, and he really just gets lost in space. He does the carryover move, and I think it turns Sengun around, and then Kyrie just flips it up with his left, off the top of the glass. It was an insane highlight. Again, with Kyrie, all this shit looks preordained. He knew he was going to do it from the
double spin.
start.
If you wanted to say the NBA is rigged, it's because Kyrie makes it feel that way. The spin move between the two against the Bucks, that feels like it's rigged, because it's just how do you know that? It was such
perfect timing. It was
how do you know that? It's that must be WWE. Clearly, it's not. But it's so perfect timing. And how did you know that it just feels WWE? Hey, we're both gonna move up, so you're gonna slip right through. Now, Kyrie's crazy. One of my favorite highlights from him was in his 55-point game against the Spurs. He has a finish around. Oh my gosh, I can't think who it was around or who it was on. But he has a finish. It was in the second half. He's going baseline, and he has one of the craziest finishes I can remember. I can't remember who it was on. I really can't, and I wish I could right now. But
let me give you
55 game.
Let me give you a highlight from the actual era I talked about him from. It was against the Celtics and maybe the first or second round when he was with LeBron and them. It was one of the IT years, actually. So I think he gets past IT on the baseline, and he's literally got nowhere to go. The baseline's shut off. He can't get back to the middle. And I forget who's protecting the rim. Maybe it's Brandon Bass or something like that. But someone's doing, they help, and they have perfect defense. They take away the basket. They're just jumping straight up. And Kyrie's just basically out of bounds. And he somehow gets from one end of the basket to the other and just reverses it. And it's literally right before he touches the ground. And he still just spins it off the glass and laid it up. It's one of the toughest finishes I've ever seen. Kyrie is a one of one.
So, Actually, it was 57 versus the Spurs, and I just looked at it. It was his in and out cross, split the double team of Marco Bellinelli and I believe Tony Parker, and then did a Euro. Oh, actually, it was Timothy Mozgov, and then did a Euro step on Danny Green to a tough left-handed finish. And I was
Mozgov
like,
played for the Spurs?
no, was it? Yes.
You talking about Splitter?
And that's sometimes no, that was you're right. I mean, they're looking at Tiago Splitter. Tiago Splitter. That was one of Skip Bayless's favorite players. Tiago Splitter. I just remember they were doing something. It was actually kind of funny. Now it'd just be stupid, but it was actually kind of funny. They did like who would be their best 5 of all time, and because it was Michael Jordan and Skip loves Mike, he put Mike and then like Slavomin, Vindenko, Tiago Splitter, Rosto Nesterovic, and Kwame Brown, and had Stephen A. read it all off because obviously Stephen A. is very flamboyant in how he says all 4 of those players. So it was actually kind of funny when he's like, I have Mike, so it doesn't really matter who's the other 4 are.
4 centers and Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to put 4 randoms in Michael Jordan. It was actually funny. But, yeah, that was fun. That went longer than expected, but that was fun. I enjoyed all of that, and I'm sad we didn't give our favorite.
Some surprises on your list, too. Like, I think we had some good surprises. So, yeah, no, that was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything else you wanted to touch upon your list? One thing that you forgot? Oh, actually, hold on. I forgot that I wanted to give a couple people of my honorable mentions that were in the list, possibly. Right. So I had, for a guy who I love to watch, I had Dirk Nowitzki. I loved his footwork. Early Dirk would not be afraid to punch on you, but late Dirk, I loved the efficiency. I loved the footwork that he had. He was just fun to watch. Carmelo Anthony. Great guy. I thought you were going to have T-Mac on your list. He actually wasn't in mine because I really didn't see peak T-Mac. But I saw more Rockets T-Mac than Magic T-Mac, and that wasn't obviously his peak. But I had him on the list. Brandon Roy was another one on my list that I really enjoyed watching. He was fun. John Wall, peak Wizards John Wall was a blur on the court, and he was fun. And then go on.
Sorry, I was going to say one of my favorite highlights of all time for anybody in basketball is John Wall getting the ball off an inbound, I think. Maybe it wasn't off an inbound. Maybe it was transition, but dude went full speed behind the back past Dennis Schroeder and then dunked on someone with his left. And I think it was off an inbound, which is even more insane. Like that's just disgusting to do in a game on any level. I don't care if it's pickup. I don't care if it's practice. But to do it in a playoff game, you got to be a true sicko. And yeah, John Wall was stupid. Like he had some insane finishes.
Best hoop mixtape of all time, bar none.
Definitely best high school mixtape of all time for sure.
Andrew Wiggins is up there. I know Zion has a really good one too, but
Austin Rivers
does have a really good one. Shaquille Johnson, I believe it is, has he just had so much unnecessary bounce. But John Wall, best one of all time. And then last but not least, this is a random one, and this is more so because I appreciate defense and I love to watch defensively in his peak. And Draymond Green. I actually really love to watch Draymond fly around defensively because he would go from guarding on the outside to getting down in the paint to then helping out there. So I just thought he was super fun to watch defensively and was a really good passer and could shoot a little bit back in those 16 days before he was a super volatile player and wanting to punch people, choke out people, and then became the media guy that he's become now. But early Draymond Green was a fun player to watch. And then obviously, I mean, there's so many more players. Like Luka could join a list. Jokic could join a list. There's just so many NBA players that have been great throughout the lifetime of me and you. So.
For sure. If I were to add 2 more honorable mentions, I know I gave you 5, but the other 2 that just came to mind, you mentioned T-Mac. T-Mac would be an honorable mention. Iverson would be an honorable mention too.
Yep.
He very well could have made the list and probably should have. Then the other one that's kind of rogue like Draymond Green would be early Celtics Marcus Smart. Really up until up until the post-pandemic Marcus Smart, I would say. So like all the way through 2020, Marcus Smart. He was aggravating in the same way J.R. Smith probably was for Nuggets fans, because Marcus Smart on certain nights would have no conscience and just think he was the number one player on the team. But he would also just give you these random ass athletic plays, these insanely smart defensive plays, gritty, tough, secretly a really good passer. So he'd give you a nice flashy pass in there and then maybe try to fight your best player too. So that Marcus Smart experience, we loved him and we trusted him in Boston. We loved him, we trusted him, and it was a fun experience. Lost him to KP though, so got to chalk it up to the game. But no, that was an era for sure.
Absolutely.
Have to throw IT4 on there too, actually. Shouts to Isaiah.
There's a lot of players that I could throw on there that were just so much fun to watch. Random one, JJ Barea. I liked watching JJ Barea for some reason. random, but JJ Barea was a guy that I liked.
Jose Juan Barrera.
Yeah. But is there anything else you wanted to touch upon before?
No, we could maybe next episode, or maybe like on a separate day, we'll go through like our favorite highlights of all these guys, because we're kind of just doing it off the cuff. But yeah, no, this is a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with this episode for sure. Yeah,
and I'm excited too to see when we go, because we were talking about doing the most exciting athletes cross sports. So it's going to be interesting to see how many of these guys make your list for cross sports.
For sure.
Because obviously we have like our top 10 here. We can assume a couple of them are going to make it, but obviously not all 10 are going to make it. So I'm excited to see what happens there. But this was the Warner Brothas Podcast. If you're only seeing part 2, make sure you go check out part 1. That's where Kyle and I give our finals predictions, give a little talk there, talk to touch about WNBA. There's a topic that I want to bring up with Kyle, but that can wait because it doesn't come up until really later, but it just got surfaced now. But YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Warner Brothas Podcast, of course. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that. Reach out to us about anything if you ever want to talk, if you want us to talk on anything else on the show, any cool topics, of course. Engagement's been great. Appreciate all of you guys, and we'll see you all.
Like a man.